Podcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Good evening, creeps. You know, everybody's entitled to one good scare on Halloween.
I told you, you need to go check on the children.
But the podcasts of the Dckt Network have enough scares to fill even the largest trick-or-treat sack.
No razor blades, I promise.
Join the pods of the Dckt Network, including Murder News, Sinister Story Hour, Beyond the Rainbow, Cause of Death, October Pod AM, Rogue Darkness, Over the Fence, and me, Brenda, host of Horrifying History, for a pajama jammy jam of deliciously dark, devilish, and disturbing Halloween treats.
There was always something eerie about the second floor of this house.
We are like the house handing out full-size Snicker bars for your ears. And we're coming to this podcast, yes, the one you're listening to right now, on October 31st. That's Halloween Day 2022 on your favorite podcast streaming apps.
A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room.
Don't forget to wear your coziest pajamas for the Dckt Network Halloween Sleepover, coming to this podcast on Halloween Day.
Welcome back to Weird True Crime. I'm Gina, and it's a big day today. We got a big case, and we've got big news. So, true crime is always better with friends, and all the podcasts I listen to usually have two people, and here I am solo, and that's really not very fun. So I figured, why not bring a really longtime friend of mine along for the ride? So please, I hope everyone is giving a warm virtual welcome to my really good friend Amber right now.
Hi.
Hi. So Amber and I, a little backstory. We met in middle school choir when Amber was in 6th grade and I was in 7th grade. And we are now way too close to 40 than I would like to admit.
Shh, don't say that.
I know, if that gives you any idea of how long we've known each other.
But I'm still the awkward, same weirdo that you know and love.
Yeah, and this is gonna be amazing because she is awkward and weird and much darker and more sarcastic than I am. So
fluent in sarcasm.
Yeah, so it's gonna be fun seeing another side on this here podcast.
I do like to play devil's advocate a lot as well. Even if you and I have the same opinion or view on something, I like to look at it from the other side as well. So I do tend to piss people off with that. Sorry, Mom, but it's just what I do.
But I think it's also good, and I have heard from people who have listened to the podcast so far, and I'll give my opinion on something, and they really wish that they could give theirs right back to me, but they can't because they're listening and, to a recording. So it'll be really nice to have somebody live in person who can, shoot something back at me.
A little bit of a different perspective.
Exactly.
Occasionally.
Probably a lot, and that's the way I like it. So I'm really excited to get into this, and I just want to go ahead and spew out like the socials and where you can find us before we get into it. Of course, we're on Instagram at Weird True Crime. We're also on Twitter now at Weird True Crime, and you can also find us online at weirdtruecrime.com, but it's nowhere near completed, so just bear with me while I get my shit together. And if you have any weird headlines or want to say hi or say something nice or mean, we'll ignore it if you're mean. But feel free to email us at weirdtruecrime@gmail.com. And I think that's everything for that. So without further ado, we're going to get into this really messed up case. You may or may not know about it. It's been around for quite some time now, and a lot of different podcasts and shows have covered this at this point, and it is solved, but like Amber had mentioned kind of before while we were writing this, it is still ongoing because the suspects that were convicted in this case are still fighting their sentences that they very much deserve. But you can feel free to tell us if you think they deserve it or if they deserve any sort of respite after you hear what they did. Cassie Jo Stoddart was a normal 16-year-old high school junior at Pocatello High School in 2006. She was born on December 21st, 1989 in Pocatello, Idaho. She was raised in the mid-sized town of around 55,000 people with her sister Christy, who was 6 years older than her, and her brother Andrew, who was only about 18 months younger than her. So they were really, really close in age. And there's not a lot of background about like her family or home life, other than it does seem like she did live with her grandparents for the most part. And their names were Paul Cisneros Sr. and Josefina Cisneros. And so it seems like she lived with them for an extended amount of time during her childhood with her siblings. And her mother, Anna Stoddart, was in the picture, but I don't really know how frequently she was living with her. And there was no mention of Cassie's biological father really anywhere in any of the records. So it seems like he probably wasn't around at all. Cassie's little brother, Andrew, he described her as headstrong and as his role model because they were so close in age. So they spent quite a bit of time together, and they hung out in the same groups, and they shared a lot of the same interests. And Cassie was super artistic. She loved to draw and listen to music in her room, which sounds very familiar to kind of the same thing that we were doing at that age and not many years before that, which kind of hits a little close to home. A little bit. Like, yeah, I can definitely relate to where she was in her life at the time. She was also a great student and had straight A's. She was friendly and had a ton of friends, but she never really seemed to get into any trouble. She wasn't a partier or anything like that. She was pretty straight-laced. She did make time for dating, and she had been with her boyfriend, Matt Beckman, for about 5 months in September of 2006. And yeah, I really wish that I had known more about Cassie. Like I said, I dug and dug, and it's really sad that there wasn't more information about her life and who she was.
That's one of the things that has really bugged me about this case, is because it's about her. She's the victim in this case, but everything that you find and everything that we're going to end up talking about is going to be about the fucktards. I'm just going to throw it out there that ended her life early. It's all about them.
Exactly. And that's not what these stories should be about.
Not at all.
They should definitely be more about the victim than anyone. And it was really disheartening to literally not be able to find anything about her anywhere in any of the other articles, news stories, or newspapers, or even the court documents. There was nothing.
Anything. But what little information that we do have, that we have seen, all says the same thing. She was one of those girls in school that you wanted to be friends with, that she was just loved and liked by her peers and her family, and she was just in a really great place in her life. And so that's the only thing that we can hold on to and kind of remember. But this case unfortunately does revolve more around the two that we'll be talking about here shortly.
Yeah, so we have to talk about them, unfortunately. But before we get there, let's kind of talk about what she was doing at that time. Like we said, she was a very happy, caring, giving girl, and she was more than happy to help others because she agreed to stay at her aunt and uncle's home to pet sit their 2 dogs and 3 cats while they went out of town for the weekend of September 22nd of 2006. And of course, they did pay her for this, but I mean, she's a 16-year-old girl. She could have very easily said, like, no, I've got better things to do. But no, she was responsible and cared about her family. And she was like, yeah, sure, I'll sit in your house on like 2 acres in the middle of nowhere and watch your pets for the weekend for you. On the evening of September 22nd, Cassie and her boyfriend, Matt, got dropped off at her aunt and uncle's house by Cassie's mother, Anna, around 5:30 p.m. And it didn't take long for them to decide that they wanted to like make it more of like a get together. So they invited more people over for the fun, and Matt's friends, Torey Adamcik and Brian Draper, showed up around 6:30 to join the movie night. Cassie, being the welcoming person that she was, she gave them a tour of the house, showed them around everywhere, and then they settled in to watch Kill Bill Volume 2. Which, I mean, anybody who knows the Kill Bill movies,
that brings back memories.
Exactly. Brian Draper, he told the group that he needed to be home by 9:30, and Matt and Torey talked about the possibility of Matt sleeping over at Torey's house that night after he left Cassie's house for the evening. And I think Matt and Torey had actually known each other since middle school. So Matt and Torey were pretty good friends. And then I think Brian moved into town a few years later, and that's how he kind of came to know both of them. And so Brian and Torey were pretty close, and, you know, Matt just kind of knew Brian through Torey. So just a little background there. Like I said, Matt talked about sleeping over at Torey's house, and then they left around 9:45. So Brian and Torey left around 9:45, and then Cassie and Matt continued to hang out and watch movies. But it didn't take long for things to start becoming kind of weird in the house. So about 15 minutes after Torey and Brian left, the power went off in the home. So, of course, this made Matt and Cassie uneasy, and they were huddled together in the living room on the couch in the darkness. And Cassie knew that there was a breaker box in the basement, but one of the dogs was acting really weird and growling and whimpering and kind of barking at the basement door. Of course, this freaked them out a little bit. Like, I know I'm getting goosebumps. Yeah. So this freaked them out a little bit, and they were like, well, if the dog's freaking out, I'm not going down there.
That's a whole lot of nope.
No, to look at anything. Matt, being the sweet 16-year-old boyfriend that he was, called his mom because he didn't feel right leaving Cassie alone. So he calls his mom to ask if he could stay the night. And as a mom, his mom did what any would do and just assume, you know, you're just trying to weasel your way into staying there, you know, because she's your girlfriend and you want to spend the night in an empty house with her, and shut it down immediately, which is completely understandable. And there were some records that I saw that said that she did offer to let Cassie stay at their house.
With them, I read that too.
Yes, but in the police reports or the actual like court reports of the interviews later on, there was no mention of that. I don't think that actually happened. I don't think that she did offer to let Cassie stay the night, from what Matt said later.
Yeah.
So Matt's mom came and picked him up at their agreed upon time, and Cassie went on to, you know, stay there for the night. And at this point, I think a couple lights had turned back on in the home. So Matt was feeling a little less uncomfortable because she did have some power back. So it's like, okay, well, at least she's not in the pitch dark black, and I'm leaving her here for the night. So after Matt left Cassie, he called his friend Torey to let him know that their plans to hang out and for him to spend the night weren't going to happen, and he had to go home. And Matt noted that Torey was whispering when he answered the phone, and he assumed it was because he was in the movie theater like he said he was going to be when they left earlier, because they had mentioned possibly going to see a movie, and he figured, oh, well, he's whispering because he's probably in the theater and doesn't, you know, want to be a jerk and be loud while other people are trying to watch the movie. But what Matt didn't know was that Torey Adamcik and Brian Draper weren't at the movies, and he wasn't keeping his voice down because he was in a crowd.
Because he was trying to be polite.
Right. He was whispering because he and Brian Draper were in the basement of Cassie's aunt and uncle's house, and he didn't want Matt or Cassie to hear him. Because it wasn't a power outage or a trip that caused the power to go out. It was Torey and Brian. And when Cassie gave them a tour of the home, because she is the kind person that she is, Brian Draper unlocked the back door so they could sneak back in later. And after the boys left to quote unquote go to the movies, they drove down the street and snuck back to her house and through the back door, killing the power, and then beginning their night of torment.
And here's where we get into the real great stuff, and I use that term very loosely.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is where we do need to go into more of the background on Torey Adamcik and Brian Draper so we can understand who they were and where their minds were.
I don't know if we'll ever actually understand that, but this is just what we can relay.
Yeah, and it has to be told, unfortunately, because it is part of the story. So Torey Adamcik and Brian Draper were also 16 years old, and they were horror movie buffs that also attended Pocatello High School with Cassie and Matt, and they were all in the same grade. And I feel like it was some sort of weird kismet that brought the pair together, because I don't know how often it is that people with these same weird, eerie desires meet?
Weird and eerie to the point that they brought it. Yeah, definitely. Like, we're weird and we met, but not to this.
We never took it to this point.
Not to this extent.
So it's always really interesting to me when you have pairs like this.
Because that's unique. Brian Draper was known for being overly interested in the Columbine High School shooting. He even had a poster of the shooters on his wall in his bedroom, which I have questions.
Yeah.
Brian Draper was known for being overly interested in the Columbine High School shooting. He even had a poster of the shooters on the wall in his bedroom. Really don't know why that wasn't addressed by his family. Are you okay? This is not something that I had like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC plastered all over my walls, not high school shooters.
Right. And my question was, I hate to immediately be like, where were their parents? Because there are so many circumstances where you just don't know what 100% is going on with your kids. But if he had this poster hanging in his room, did they never see it?
Did he have it hidden in a place in his room to where they couldn't see it? Or did they just not go in there? Or like, was it a circumstance that we don't know? Were they just not able to be as involved?
Or maybe was it one of those circumstances where the parents were embarrassed or afraid to address it?
In denial?
Maybe. And it's hard. You don't want to sit here and shit on somebody who's parenting.
No.
But I feel like this is kind of a red flag.
It's a red banner, red blimp, maybe like that. For me, it would not fly. Okay, so Brian liked the Columbine shooters. Torey Adamcik may not have had a weird fascination with the shootings, but he was really interested in horror movies, specifically the Scream franchise, which originally launched in 1996. Scream 2 and 3 was released by 2006. So they all three of the original trilogy had been released by then. And that I knew of this case because of its association with, for this reason specifically. I'm sitting here with a laptop that has a sticker of Ghostface on the other side of it. Like, Scream literally is one of my all-time favorite movies. They're not that great, to be perfectly honest, but
they're not. It's the camp. It's when they came out and how old we were when they came out, and I think that's why they have such a significance for us.
Yes. Brian Draper had a concerning history of behaviors, including the planning of a school shooting in 2004 with another unnamed underage friend. A student of the school reported their concerns to administration, and when it was investigated, Draper and the friend said that they were, quote, kidding. All the school did was tell them not to make threats, even in jest. That was it. No further investigation, no concern about this type of language. But, back then, it wasn't as like now. That shit would be squashed.
Squashed immediately.
So back then, it wasn't as commonly taken as seriously as it is now. So we're looking back on it like, God, why the hell didn't they just like, oh hell no, shut that shit down now? But it's because it wasn't like it is nowadays. Just 1 month later, Draper and another boy walked through a school dance pretending to shoot people. Then again, in 2006, a concerned peer turned in a note between Draper and none other than Torey Adamcik with the phrase, "When are we going to do this?" scribbled on it. School officials dismissed the students' concerns.
I'm confused. I understand that it's a different time, and maybe the first one doesn't warrant like any sort of real action by the school.
Yeah.
But how is it that multiple concerning actions and statements were made by the same person and they were just ignored or dismissed or being unjust or not serious? This is 3 different instances in a matter of 2 years, maybe not even 2 years, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
Of him doing making concerning actions, statements, writings about potentially dangerous situations against his peers. I don't understand how these like continuous signs of like disturbed behavior and violence can just be ignored over and over again. And if he had brought a gun to the school at some point, is that when they would have finally gotten the attention of the school? Or I don't know. Unfortunately, even now, this is nothing new.
No.
And we've seen it time and time again, unfortunately, with the increase in mass shootings and the people who are doing these things showing warning signs, and other people saying things like the Uvalde shooter, like his peers called him a school shooter before it ever even happened. And so it's just at what point are the school officials and the people in charge supposed to pay attention, or is it actually serious enough for them to like put their foot down and do something about it?
It's hard. That's a very, very hard thing, because look at all of the students that they have to pay attention to with varying circumstances, home, whatever. You know, my 10-year-old is a weirdo. I have no idea where she gets it from. Still trying to figure that out.
That's a rhetorical question.
But, you know, I'm sure she does some weird, questionable shit at school, too, that like some teacher could be like, should we be concerned about this? But, you know, we know that it's nothing. So they have all of these students, all of these kids that are doing all of this weird shit. When do they know if it's legitimate? They can't. Every single time that there is the remote inclination of something like that, they can't stop the world and address it, because they would never actually do any education. It would just be this.
And that makes me think, how do we know that Brian Draper wasn't the only student at the time doing these types of actions? It's hard to know what is right and what is the best way to handle it.
We can just sit back here, you know, hindsight's 2020. Like what if we should have, woulda, coulda, but we weren't there. We didn't know. We couldn't have. There's just, we can only just talk about how we wished it would have gone down for Cassie's sake.
On the other side of the spectrum, we have Torey Adamcik, and like Amber said, he wasn't obsessed with the Columbine shooting, but he was obsessed with horror movies, knives, and guns, according to students who knew him. And Adamcik did have a knife collection that he kept in his closet. So on one side, we have somebody with the Columbine shooters on his wall, and on the other side, we have someone with a knife collection in his closet.
Yeah.
And I don't know if his parents knew about this collection or not.
See, this is also back then. I remember somebody that I dated had a knife collection as well, and it wasn't a concerning thing. It was just, hey, I didn't think anything of it. It was just, hey, look at this cool knife that I got, you know? So it's
hard to say if that's really a concerning thing or not. He also talked about taking notes while watching horror movies so he could learn how to commit the perfect crime and not get caught. And the problem here is a kid can be interested in horror movies or think knives are cool and maybe even collect them, and it doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And you can sit there and say, oh yeah, I take notes when I watch horror movies. Other people probably thought he was kidding or didn't take it seriously. Because I could see somebody we know saying something like that. Hell, I see myself saying something like that in jest or being silly.
I was even going to say I probably have said that or done that a time or two, because I like writing short stories and it's information to use.
And how do you think other storytellers get their ideas?
So it's not that far-fetched.
No.
It's, again, another one of those things. When do you draw the line of it's a real concerning issue? Although, I mean, we're not even done talking about both of them. And this is enough things between the two of them that
should be cause for concern. And to that point, like it's much easier to say that someone who makes comments like that are joking than to say that someone threatens to shoot a school is joking. So Adamcik saying, oh, I take notes to learn how to kill people is much different than Draper threatening to shoot up a school.
Right.
So one is much more serious than the other. Right. So it's easy to see how people could dismiss all of these behaviors that Adamcik was showing as just like him being silly or just his personality. Oh. But he did go through school halls pretending to stab people or slit their throats.
This also, I think, with both of them, and especially kids that age and that time, it's an attention-seeking behavior. Exactly. So this is just a more extreme way of displaying it. And so people probably wouldn't have been concerned about it because they just thought, oh, they're just trying to get attention. They just want, whatever.
That's just Torey.
Exactly.
And I didn't see any sort of indication that like this had ever been brought up to administration or anything. Any concerns about him or like the pretending to stab people or anything like that. So I don't think that was ever anything that was brought up to school admins like Brian Draper's actions have been. But the student who did know Adamcik and told authorities all of this information about him, which is where it came from, was like the police interviews. This student did tell police that Torey had a long-standing crush on Cassie. So he had a crush on her for about 2 or 3 years. Unrequited love. Cassie's dating his friend now. No interest in him. Probably leads to some hurt feelings in a 16-year-old boy. Like I said, Draper and Adamcik were friends, met in some sort of weird kismet. So you have, two very intense personalities, interests coming together in a friendship. And they unfortunately had been discussing for some time that they did want to kill people. They would argue about whether it would be a mass shooting like Columbine, because that's what Draper wanted, or if it would be more like the screen killings, which is what Torey wanted. And they did end up deciding to go the scream route, which is why this case is called the scream killing. Adamcik wanted to follow in the footsteps of his favorite murdering duo, Billy Loomis and Stu Macher, which is hard because as a fan of the Scream franchise, those names hold a very special place in your heart.
And these dip-dongs are destroying that.
Exactly. So on August 31st of 2006, Adamcik called his 18-year-old friend Joe Lucero and asked him if he would take them to a pawn shop to buy knives because they're 16, so they can't buy them. Exactly. So it goes to show, to me, how immature an 18-year-old is, because like my first reaction if somebody asked me to go buy them knives would be like, yeah, let's go. But
also, this is a different time. Like I said, I mean, I dated a 16-year-old that had this knife collection. So there's definitely, it's like, oh, no, it's cool. Knives are cool. Boys, we men, we like our knives. And so he probably was a dumbass. He's associating with these two upstanding members of society. So, yeah. Yeah.
And I think that Joe Lucero did know that Adamcik had a knife collection. And so he just assumed that he wanted more knives for his collection. And that's all it was. So he took them to a pawn shop to help them. And Adamcik picked out 1 knife and Draper picked out 3. And so I guess the boys had taken money out at an ATM prior to getting to the pawn shop. So they gave Lucero the cash and he paid for it. And out they went with their 4 knives. It was also around this time that they started recording themselves talking about killing people. And later they would say this was for a horror film that they were making.
And you can find these videos. They're online still, and they're awful and gut-wrenching to watch, but it's also they play a very, very important part for later on and bringing them to justice for Cassie. So while they're not pleasant to talk about, you got to talk about them anyway.
Yeah, because it is proof that they did what they did. I am not going to play the recordings because I couldn't bring myself to listen to their voice.
I don't want to listen to them again. I've had enough.
Yeah.
So if you want to find them and listen to them, they're readily available for you to find. And the videos to watch and listen to everything. So
it's out there. But I do have just a little snippets of some of the transcripts from the videos that I'm just going to read through. So one of these videos was recorded on the evening of September 21st of 2006 around 8:05 p.m. And yeah, I'm just gonna quote what they said. So it starts with Brian Draper and he says, "We're going for a high death count, Adamcik. Plus, we're not going to get caught, Brian. If we're going for guns, we're just going to end it. We're going to grab the guns and get out of there and kill everybody and leave. Draper, we're going to make history. We're going to make history. Adamcik, for all you FBI agents watching this." And then Draper laughs. "Adamcik, you weren't quick enough." Laughing. Draper. You weren't quick enough and you weren't smart enough. And we're going over to Jane Doe 1's house where we're going to snoop around over there and see if she's home alone or not. And if she's home alone, splat, she dead. That's just a little snippet of that video because they don't deserve more than that. But this goes to show you that this does not sound like somebody who's plotting a horror movie or making a horror movie, and they are listing. So Jane Doe 1 is the actual name of a person that they were targeting. Of course, her name has been redacted, so we don't know what it is. Jane Doe 1 is not Cassie.
No.
So
Somebody completely different.
they are sitting here talking about killing someone that they know. It's not a horror film. And these dumbass kids, they had a hit list of people they were going to kill, and they can be heard discussing their plans to kill one of them in this, like I said. And fortunately, this person they're talking about was not home alone, and so their plans were foiled. Thank God. And they recorded several more videos on the night of September 21st where they discussed that killing shouldn't be illegal and that it was natural selection. Last time I checked, natural selection has nothing to do with one person killing another person.
No.
That's not what natural selection means. No. And in the same conversation, they talked about another redacted name for someone called Jane Doe number 3. So not even Jane Doe number 2, but Jane Doe number 3. And that means there were at least 3 other people besides Cassie on this death list. I don't know what the total number was.
I don't know either.
There was at least 1 male on the list as well, from another video that they made where they talked about a male victim or potential victim. And Brian Draper also makes comments on this night in their videos saying that they are 6 psychopaths who get off on killing people, to which Adamcik responds, "That sounds good, baby."
So, at the beginning of this, them talking like, yeah, we're going to go and check out this girl's house, see if she's there. And if she's there, she's dead. If they're really getting into character, they're really trying to get into the mindset. Like if this was, honestly, for a horror movie, they're weirdos enough that I could see like, okay, so they're taking it a little far, but they're really getting into it. If this is for a horror movie, they're playing the part correctly. But we're getting into multiple and ongoing and multiple videos. You can just tell the thing that drove me, that just got under my skin the most, like listening to the video or listening to their videos and watching the videos and everything, because the video quality isn't all that great. There's a lot of it that they're just like staring off at the night sky, and there's not discernible things that you're actually seeing, so really you're just listening to it for the audio. But the thing that got me the most was the more that they kept talking, the more that they kept recording, the more that they went on and on, the more you could just feel how much more excited and charged that they were getting about it. So that doesn't really ring into let's make a horror film. That means they're getting carried away.
Yeah, they're getting amped up and excited.
The buildup is going. The next day, on September 22nd, 2006, they continue the recordings throughout the day. The first one occurs at about 8:28 a.m. when they run into Cassie in the school hallways as she's getting books from her locker. This hits so hard because literally when they're recording her and they're talking to her and seeing her, they already have plans to kill her.
The chills. So many chills.
I remember this video. She just seems so annoyed, like, leave GTFO, go away, which I am not a morning person. I'm not a happy, cheerful, chirper? Words are hard type of person.
Same. You don't talk to me in the morning.
No. There's a very real possibility I will bite your face off if you talk to me before I'm fully awake. So no, and I was like this in school. Don't talk to me until I will be the one to talk to you first. If I talk to you, if I open up communication, you're good. You're not gonna get throat punched.
No, and you were like that, and I can attest to that because I was there.
You were there. Yeah, and we stayed the night with each other, and
he saw you in the morning. Yes. Don't
look in my direction. Don't breathe in my direction. No. But yes, but that's a very common relatable kind of like I was just like her. I was just like that in school. Mm-hmm. And there's, video showing her like this. So here's a little snippet from that video. Draper, hey, look, it's Cassie. Hello, Cassie. Cassie says hello. Draper laughs. I'm getting you on tape. Okay, say hi, please. And then as I had mentioned, just annoyed, completely bothered, she just says hi. And that's it. So around noon the same day, they're sitting in classroom with the camera on the table facing them. This is another video that I vividly remember. And they say in the video that they're skipping their 4th hour class to work on their plans for that night, essentially making their death list. They're obviously at school because they're talking quietly, and they even stop for a time because they notice that somebody's watching them. And here's a snippet of that conversation. Draper, hopefully this will go smoothly and we can get our first kill done and then keep going. Adamcik, for you future serial killers watching this tape, they both laugh. Adamcik, I don't know what to say. Draper, it's Adamcik. Good luck with that. Draper, good luck. Adamcik, hopefully you don't have like 8 or 9 failures like we have. Draper, we've probably tried maybe 10 times, but they've never been home alone. So Adamcik, or when they have, their parents show up. Draper, as long as you're patient, and we're patient, and now we're getting paid off because our victim's home alone. So we got our plan all worked out. I'm sorry. Cassie's family, but she had to be the one. We have to stick with the plan, and she's perfect. So she's going to die. He laughs. Why?
Why is she perfect?
Why?
Because they know she's going to be alone and there's not going to be anybody to get in their way. Like I have full body chills.
It's just why?
I understand the devil's advocate, but at this point, I don't see how anybody could look at this and not take that seriously. And they're sitting there apologizing to her family on tape saying, oh, sorry.
Sorry, but she had to be the one. She's perfect.
And this is their friend's girlfriend.
And that's why I say why. Like, where's the disconnect that, like, this is somebody that they know. This is somebody that they've hung out with. This is somebody that they have spent social time with outside of school. How? Why?
Because they're so set on this weird goal of being known as the next Scream Killers, the next
Billy and Stu.
Yeah, the next Ted Bundy or other serial killers, as they talk about in another one of their tapes. They're so set on this weird, sick fantasy that they're not seeing that, like, they're actually talking about real people.
No, that's exactly what it seems like. It's that they're, like I said, that disconnect.
So the next time we hear from Adamcik and Draper is at 9:53 p.m. on the night of September 22nd. And by this point, they had crashed Matt and Cassie's night at our aunt and uncle's house and left to, quote unquote, go see a movie. Of course, they pick up the camera to go over the next steps. And here's how that conversation went. Draper, we're here in his car. The time is 9:50, September 22nd, 2006. Unfortunately, we have the grueling task of killing our 2 friends, and they are right in that house just down the street. Adamcik, we just talked to them. We were there for an hour, but Draper, we checked out the whole house. We know there's lots of doors. There's lots of places to hide. I unlocked the back doors. It's all unlocked. Now we just got to wait, and we're really nervous right now, but we're ready. Adamcik, we're listening to the greatest rock band ever. Draper, we've waited for this for a long time. Adamcik, Pink Floyd, before we commit the ultimate crime of murder. Draper, we've waited for this a long time. Adamcik, a long time. Draper, stay tuned. They're sitting there amping themselves up, talking about how they are potentially going to kill two people if Matt is still in the house.
Their friend. They're legitimate. Like, this is not a friend through another friend like Cassie was. This is their friend, supposedly.
No, and Torey Adamcik had known Matt, 4 years at this point, and had spent the night at each other's houses and created a relationship, and here he is willing to kill him to fulfill this weird fantasy. Back in Frank and Allison Contreras' house, Cassie was now alone because her boyfriend Matt got picked up by his mom after his unsuccessful attempt to stay the night because he was worried about her. So knowing that she was now alone, Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik made their way upstairs in the dark house while wearing all black and white masks designed to look like they were covered in blood. We'll talk more about that later. So in one of the police interviews, Adamcik said that he and Draper argued while they were still in the basement before Draper cut off all the power in the house again. Draper was holding what was referred to in the trial as a Sloan blade, which is a dagger-type weapon, while Adamcik was holding a hunting-style knife called a Rambo knife. According to Adamcik, Draper told him to go into the living room and he refused, so Draper went around him into the living room where Cassie saw him and said something to him and screamed. They then proceeded to stab her 30 times before fleeing the home and heading back to their car. And this is the transcript from the video that was taken after the murder at 11:31.
Us reading this transcript telling you does not convey the overall disgusting feeling that you get whenever you're listening to this. It's absolutely awful listening to these two dumbass kids, so excited, so amped, so their voices are shaking. They're just
high on adrenaline.
Yes.
Adrenaline. Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Brian Draper says, just killed Cassie. We just left her house. This is not a fucking joke. Adamcik, I'm shaking. Draper, I stabbed her in the throat and I saw her lifeless body. It just disappeared. Dude, I just killed Cassie. Adamcik, oh my God. Draper, oh fuck. Oh fuck, that felt like it wasn't even real. I mean, it went by so fast. Adamcik, shut the fuck up. We gotta get our act straight. Draper, it's okay, okay? We'll just buy movie tickets now. Adamcik, okay. Draper says something we can't understand. Adamcik, no. Draper, okay, bye. So here they are, right after they killed her, getting out the video camera to record themselves admitting to the crime.
They essentially just confessed to a crime and recorded it. Bam.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is what they wanted from the beginning. The next day, Saturday, September 23rd, Matt tried to call Cassie several times, but she never answered the phone. He didn't have his own car, so there was no way for him to drive over to check on her. Saw reports that said her mother, Anna, also tried to get in touch with Cassie that day without success. If my kid had a friend, boyfriend, anything like that, and not able to get a hold of them, or, even if it was my kid and I can't, if she stayed the night somewhere else and I don't have her checking in with me.
Yeah, and she's not answering the phone.
You best bet I'm up in my car heading over there, or I'm calling somebody else to go over there and check immediately.
Exactly. If I'm not in a place where I can get in a car and go over there. You can't judge because you don't know.
We weren't there. They probably, and also this was just probably a normal thing that,
Maybe she didn't answer the phone sometimes.
Maybe, yeah. And this is also 2006 to where, we've got the phones glued to attached to our hands, that this wasn't like this back then. So maybe this wasn't really a cause for concern, but Matt and his mom were a little bit more because of the weird thing with the power going out. We can sit here and say because we're in the time frame that we are now that it's
immediate response all the time.
So then now, no judgment at all whatsoever on their family, anything like that, because we were not there and it was a completely different time. So this was probably just normal. Like, a normal thing. She stayed the night somewhere else. Maybe she slept in, maybe so many different circumstances that, we're sitting here talking about true crime, so our thoughts immediately go in this direction because we're built that way now. They were not probably like that, so we can't really say that it's out of the norm. So around 7 to 8 p.m. that evening, Torey Adamcik picked Matt up so he could spend the night at Torey's house. Matt told Torey he hadn't heard from Cassie all day and was concerned, and asked Torey if he would drive to her aunt and uncle's house so he could see if she was okay. Torey told Matt that he didn't have enough gas to drive out there because he had to make the gas that he had last the rest of the week. So Matt spent the night at Torey's house unaware that his friend knew exactly why Cassie wasn't answering his calls. It wasn't until the next day when Cassie's mother called him asking what he had done to her daughter that he knew something was wrong.
Could you imagine being concerned about even a friend or like a boyfriend or girlfriend not being able to get in hold of them, staying the night at a friend's house looking for some sort of support, only to find out later that they were the reason why the whole time?
I feel bad for Matt.
Yes.
For many, many reasons. But knowing that he stayed the night at that house after what had happened and how he had no idea, it hurts.
Yeah. And of course, being the boyfriend and the last one to see her, he's the one that's going to be immediately pointed at.
Always questioned. Yep.
To find out that something's happened to your girlfriend because her mom is asking you what you did.
And that's not an unreasonable thing. Like, so did you break up? Did you have a fight? That's common things, especially for kids of that age. So but to know that it's gone beyond that to this level.
That would be really hard to move past, ever. Cassie Jo Stoddart was found unmoving and surrounded by blood in the upstairs living room of 11372 Whispering Springs Drive by her 13-year-old cousin on Sunday, September 24th of 2006. The coroner's report showed that she had 30 stab wounds, nearly half of which were fatal. That poor cousin.
Oh, yeah. 13 years old, she's got to live with that for the rest of her life. That sentence alone is just a lot to process because the 30 stab wounds, that's a lot.
That's personal.
That's very, very personal. And nearly half of them were fatal. So I guess it also, I don't know if you can find some, maybe that means that it was a quicker.
You can hope.
Yeah. With that, because they were fatal, she may have bled out faster.
Before she even knew that she had been stabbed so many times.
Before all of that really set in, maybe her body, because it had been attacked so viciously, so fast and badly, that her body kind of hopefully protected her from feeling all of that. And it went faster than we can only hope.
And of course, the investigation into her death began immediately with the interview of her boyfriend, Matt Beckman, which is what we said would happen. So he was one of the last known people to see her before her death. He recounted Friday night's events, telling investigators about Adamcik and Draper visiting the house, the weird happenings with the power going out, the failed attempts at staying with her to keep her company, and his eventual ride home from his parents, along with what he did for the rest of the night. I'm not going to go into it because it's really not that exciting. He stayed up late. He read stories with his dad. He watched movies with him. I think he finally went to bed around 3. He was there all night, awake with his parents. Nothing uneventful occurred. He did also tell investigators that Adamcik and Draper were both known to have crushes on Cassie, and they were into horror films. The understandable next steps are to interview the other teens who were with her.
Yeah, naturally.
So they made their way to Torey Adamcik's house to interview him. Torey Adamcik was interviewed at his home with his parents present around 8 p.m. on September 24th, so the same day that Cassie was found. He recounted the same information that Matt had given. He picked up Brian Draper and they went over to Cassie's aunt and uncle's house for what they were told would be a house party. They watched Kill Bill Volume 2 and ate popsicles. While Cassie gave them a tour of the home, Adamcik said he opened drawers, doors, cabinets, and played with a weight machine that was in the garage. Around 9:45, he and Brian Draper left the house and drove directly to the Carmike Theaters, where they decided to watch the movie Pulse. But when asked, he couldn't remember which theater they were in or give any details about the plot of the movie or what it was about. Which is pretty curious considering that he's saying he sat and watched a movie for a solid 2 hours, but he couldn't give you
any kind of detail.
Any information about character names, any sort of plot points at all for a movie he sat there and watched for 2 hours.
I have the memory of a goldfish, and I still could have at least given something.
And then Torey Adamcik told police that after the movie was over, the two boys went back to Adamcik's house where they spent the night.
So next to be interviewed, naturally, was Brian Draper at his home with his mother present on September 25th. Draper gave the same explanation of the evening at Cassie's, including opening drawers, doors, and cabinets, and playing with the weight machine in the garage.
It seems contrived to me, or planned, because they both said that, oh yeah, while we were in the house, we opened doors, drawers, and cabinets, and played with the weight machine. They both did that exact thing.
So that was probably one of the first indications that this was a worked out. Yeah, they planned to give this alibi. You know, when people if you watch a lot of
scripted or unscripted shows,
when they give extra details, it's because they are guilty and they're trying to be less guilty, which just backfires on them.
And if you have two people saying the exact same thing, it's gonna raise eyebrows.
Yes. So Draper also told detectives that they left around 9:45 and went to the Carmike Theater to watch the movie Pulse. However, he also could not recall which theater they were in or what the movie was about. It was after this interview that investigators spoke with an unnamed classmate about Cassie's murder. The student had information about Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik that was relevant to her death. It's at this point that we find out about Torey Adamcik's obsession with knives, guns, and horror films, and that he and Draper were writing a horror movie of their own. This student also overheard Cassie tell them that she wanted to be in their movie when they made it.
Oh.
Which, I mean, as a friend, like, if I was Cassie, I totally would have wanted to do that. Like, hell yeah, you're doing a horror movie. I want to do it. Let me do it with you. But considering how this ended, ugh.
It's so disturbing.
The student also informs officers that Torey Adamcik had a crush on Cassie, along with other information about his behavior at school that we had discussed earlier in the story.
After this very informative discussion and the inconsistencies with Brian and Torey's stories, they decided to go interview Brian Draper again, but at the police station this time with his parents present. So during this interview, Brian Draper admitted that they did not go to the movies after leaving Cassie and Matt. And instead, he tells investigators that they drove down the road from the home, put on gloves, and proceeded to walk around the neighborhood with the intention of going through cars, quote unquote. But he said that none of the cars were unlocked and he couldn't remember what neighborhood where they were in or give a description of any of the cars. And at this point, Draper did agree to take a polygraph test because the cops still aren't buying his story. Mm-hmm. For obvious reasons, because he can't give any sort of detailed information about anything about where he was, what he was doing, what cars he was looking at, house numbers, nothing.
Gave detailed information about what he did in Cassie's aunt and uncle's house, but nothing after that.
That's a really good point. Yeah, so they have that part of their story, but they don't have any sort of real detailed explanation of what they did afterwards. So, like I said, he agreed to take a polygraph test. Anyone who listens or knows true crime knows that polygraph tests aren't admissible in court. And he probably thought that he was clever enough to lie and stay calm to hide any inconsistencies, but even the most honest person can be seen as untruthful on a polygraph due to the high stress of the situation. I would not pass a polygraph.
Oh, hell no. If you asked me, is your name Amber? I would probably still fail.
Yes. Anxiety is a real thing. Yeah. That is a huge amount of pressure to put on anyone. So the fact that he's sitting there thinking that he can pass a polygraph if he is innocent or whatever he's trying to accomplish is just like, it's bullshit. And this is why this kind of thing is not admissible in court. Yep. Because it's not a good indication of whether you're guilty or not.
It's not a consistent, reliable method.
No. After Brian Draper's polygraph test on September 27th, Brian and his father stepped out into the hallway while the investigator was talking to Brian's mother. It was noted that when Brian and his father came back into the room, that his father was crying. This and whatever the polygraph showed led to the decision to bring back the original detectives that interviewed Draper, which is not a good sign. No. At the beginning of the third interview with Brian Draper, he was read his Miranda rights. He knows he's in deep shit at this point, and he decides to come clean about what happened that evening. He tells detectives that after they left Matt and Cassie, they parked down the street where they proceeded to get their costumes consisting of black shirts, gloves, white masks, and knives. Then they walked down the driveway and entered the house through the basement door that they had unlocked during their tour earlier. Draper said they walked around the basement trying to get Matt and Cassie's attention so they would come down and check things out. They threw objects to the floor, breaking them, and shut off the lights using the breaker box. And after they realized that Matt and Cassie were not going to come down the stairs, they turned some of the lights back on. It was at this point that Matt's mom picked him up. And once Matt was gone and they realized that he was, and Torey had that conversation with Matt on the phone, whispering, pretending to be in a movie theater, they decided to turn the lights back off and went upstairs.
So earlier when we were talking about when the power went off and they were debating if Cassie knew that the breaker was downstairs, but the dog was just acting weird and whimpering and whining. Well, it was probably because the dog could hear the two dip-dongs breaking shit and causing all a bunch of noise down in the basement, didn't know what was going on, but Matt and Cassie couldn't.
And I think Brian even said that in his interview, that like one of the dogs was freaking out, but I just kind of left that out because we had already talked about it. But yeah, obviously the dog knew what was up.
Yep.
After they turned these lights back off, they went upstairs. Brian Draper then says that he slammed a door shut in an attempt to scare Cassie, and they walked into the living room. Cassie was laying on the couch and jumps up and asks who they are and tells them she's going to kick their ass.
What a freaking badass.
That is such a strong, bold reaction to have in a situation like that. And it just goes to show you what a strong person she was.
And you can tell, she's asking who they are. She doesn't recognize them at this point. I don't know if it's better that she doesn't know who it is, or, would it make it worse if she had known who?
It would have made it worse for them if she had survived.
Absolutely.
Obviously. But that's a good question. I don't know. I think she would have been terrified either way. And
Absolutely.
honestly, more confused if she had known who it was. So maybe it's better that she didn't know.
Yeah.
Draper told detectives that it was Torey Adamcik alone.
Of course.
And that once she was dead, they left the house and drove back to Adamcik's parents' house, where they got a blue trash bag from the garage and stuffed it with costumes and knives. The pair also grab a bottle of rubbing alcohol and leave the home again in Adamcik's car. After stopping to buy matches, they drive out to Black Rock Canyon, where they walk down the trail for an undetermined amount of time, stop, burn the bag full of evidence with the rubbing alcohol and the matches. Draper couldn't remember if Adamcik buried the bag or not. The pants and the shoes both of the boys were wearing during the murder were not destroyed, so there was still a lot of evidence on those. And after the confession, Brian Draper rode with detectives to Black Rock Canyon, where he took them to exactly where they left the bag full of clothing and knives and other evidence. And we do have a list of evidence that was found.
And it's quite the list.
Long list.
In the bag, there were stick matches, a pair of black boots, a pair of blue rubber gloves, a pair of Athletics Works brand fingerless gloves, a melted brown hydrogen peroxide bottle, a multicolored mask, a large dagger-type knife with a sheath, a silver and black-handled knife with a signature of Sloan written on the inside, a small dagger-type knife with a sheath, a Sony videotape. This is the videotape that was later repaired and straightened in order to make it playable and transcribed from earlier. A black-handled serrated folding knife. Later DNA testing revealed that Stoddart's blood was present on this knife. A partly burned piece of paper with writing in pencil. So it says, Brian is going to kill Cassie home alone. Stop. Runs into Torey. We murder Cassie, is home alone. House Brian kills his on the back porch, his body on the back porch. House Brian has, and we kill her, killing Matt.
So it doesn't make a lot of...
That hurt my brain.
It doesn't make a lot of sense, but as I'm looking at it now, my thought is if it's partially burned, maybe they can only
That's only
the
what
writing.
That's probably only what they were able to make out, and
So it's probably not the complete sentences because you can't make out everything it says.
Yeah. So to continue with the list, a red and white mask. Later DNA testing revealed partial DNA profile of Adamcik on the mask. A single black glove from later DNA testing revealed on this a partial DNA profile from an unknown male.
Which is very interesting.
Very interesting. A pair of partially burned black Puma brand gloves. Later DNA testing revealed that Stoddart's blood had soaked into these gloves. A blue plastic garbage bag, a partially burned black long-sleeved Hager brand dress shirt, a Calvin Klein black dress shirt. Later DNA testing revealed that Stoddart's blood was present on the shirt cuff, a white and gray sock, and a small piece of black cord. Some of it seems kind of random, like they just threw a bunch of shit together because they didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Why a piece of black cord and a gray sock, but not the pants and shoes that they were wearing?
Right. Like, where did the rest of the stuff go? this was what was recovered. What did get destroyed?
So I think all of this was in the bag, and they tried to burn everything in the bag, but failed. So there were things in this bag
That got damaged, but not completely destroyed.
Yes.
That makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So after finding the evidence, detectives brought Torey, Adamcik, and his parents to the police station for further questioning. It's at this point that Adamcik told police the cover story about trying to break into cars and then sleeping over at Draper's house that night. When confronted about leaving the home to buy matches at a convenience store, Adamcik admitted that they did go buy matches because Draper was a smoker, and that before they left, Draper put a shovel in his trunk and he saw a Halloween-type mask in the trunk that had probably been purchased a while ago. I used to smoke, and if I needed matches or whatever, clearly the first thing that I would bring with me is a shovel.
I don't understand how that's correlated at all.
Exactly.
That just seems like a throwaway to me to explain why there was a shovel in the car.
That's 100% what it is, but what in their twisted ass brains thought that made sense.
Because he's 16.
Yeah, well, we knew everything when we were 16.
Totally.
Sorry, Mom.
We know better now than we did then.
Adamcik told detectives that they then drove to Black Rock Canyon, where Draper smoked a couple of cigarettes. When detectives confronted him about the possibility that he was involved in the murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart earlier that night, Adamcik decided to shut up and ask for a lawyer.
I did see, and this was something that's not in our notes, but after this interview was done and he stopped talking and asked for a lawyer and the detectives left the room, there's cameras in there that record. So Torey's dad asked him, is this true? Is this really what we're doing? And Adamcik goes, yeah.
Yes. That video I remember seeing, and I got chills when I watched it.
I got chills just saying. Brian Draper and Torey Adamcik were both charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Their trials were held separately. During the trials, Joe Lucero, the 18-year-old friend that took them to the pawn shop to buy the knives, identified the knives found in Black Rock Canyon as the knives he purchased for them on August 31st of 2006. While both of them may have tried to pin most of the brutal murder on the other, a forensic pathologist gave the opinion that 2 knives were used to kill Cassie. One serrated and one non-serrated. In his opinion, the serrated blade caused most of the fatal wounds, but one wound that struck the right ventricle of Cassie's heart was inflicted by the non-serrated blade. It's interesting to note that the serrated blade is referred to as a hunting knife, and the non-serrated blade would be the Sloan knife. In an interview given by Draper, he said that he was holding the Sloan knife while Adamcik was holding the hunting knife. Draper's statements are that Adamcik was the one who stabbed Cassie to death. In Adamcik's later statements, he says that Draper basically bullied him to participate and he only stabbed Cassie a handful of times after Draper threatened to kill him. Draper basically said the same thing about Adamcik.
Of course.
They were both found guilty and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years for the conspiracy to commit murder charge. In 2010, Cassie's family filed a civil suit against the Pocatello School District, citing that previous behavioral issues with Draper, like the ones we talked about, and the boys recording themselves planning the murders while on school grounds made them responsible for the murder. The Idaho Supreme Court ruled that the district was not liable, stating that the murder, while tragic, was unforeseeable, absent the benefit of hindsight. Justice Joel Horton wrote, in light of the lack of foreseeability of this crime and the enormous burden that would be imposed upon school districts if we were to find that a duty exists in this case, we conclude that no duty attached to the school district under these circumstances.
And we kind of touched on this earlier whenever we were talking about how would the school be expected to handle it. It's all that they would be doing throughout their days.
I totally understand the fallout that could happen if this were to be held up because of all of the responsibility on the school districts moving forward.
Absolutely.
To try to stay on top of every single little thing.
Exactly, like we had said earlier. But I 100% see where Cassie's family is coming from, because
there were warning signs.
There were. but they didn't know that they were warning signs at the time. But, and, you know, Cassie's family, like, if they had taken a chance, if they had, you know, let's just look into this a little bit further, maybe it could have prevented. So I 100% see where the family was coming from with that.
If the school had maybe even punished him a little more extremely for his behaviors, I don't think that would have stopped him from doing any of this, though. At the end of the day, the school district shouldn't be held responsible for one student's actions, even if some of these things were recorded on school grounds, because there are a lot of kids to keep up with at school every day, and you can't pay attention to everything that everyone's doing at the same time.
But Brian Draper's lawyers asked for a new trial in 2011, stating that the sentencing was unconstitutionally cruel because he was a minor at the time of his conviction. The ruling was upheld. Torey Adamcik also appealed his sentencing in 2013. During the evidentiary hearing, which Cassie's family attended, he apologized to her family, stating that he, quote, never wanted it to happen, unquote. Anna, Cassie's mother, said that the hearing shattered any closure they had since the death of her daughter. It's just ridiculous. The parents need to get over their denial, realize that Adamcik did it, and he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail, and he should. Anna said, they still have their son. I have to visit my daughter in the cemetery. I didn't get to see her graduate or get married or have babies.
Oh, my heart.
In a gross twist, she said that she hasn't had any contact from Adamcik's parents since the original trial, but did receive a call from the Dr. Phil show about appearing on an episode with Shannon Adamcik.
Who is Torey's mother?
Unsurprisingly, she turned down the offer. Would have too.
Shannon Adamcik had been a busy woman. She released a book in January of 2013 titled The Guilty Innocent. It's a little telling that she releases a book and tries to appear on Dr. Phil with Cassie's mother in the same year. And that's a really gross way to gain publicity.
Because that's exactly what that was.
For a very self-serving book. I'm sure that Cassie's family was very, very disturbed and put off by this sort of behavior from her killer's mother.
Again, I like to play devil's advocate. I mean, being the mom of Brian or Torey, that's also a special kind of hell to have to live with, knowing that the love that you feel for your child is completely unconditional. But there's also a point to where whenever you should be able to separate when they've done something as heinous. And with the videos and all of the evidence, there's no denying that they were in fact responsible for her murder. So they can't make...
There's no denial or reasoning for what happened. And I understand, as the parent of the person who committed the crime, wanting to reach out in some way or apologize to the victim. But this was 7 years later. 7 years later through Dr. Phil. Yes. If you really cared, if you really, really wanted to reach out and show your remorse or sorrow on your child's behalf, wouldn't you have done that as soon as it happened?
Absolutely. And in a more respectful, private manner.
Not through people who work at Dr. Phil.
Doctor.
Who's not even a doctor.
Doctor, quote, quote, Phil.
That's gross.
God. So Adamcik and Draper are both still in prison, serving their life plus 30-year sentences. It's really sad that they were only 16 when they made this decision to kill a classmate, a friend, effectively ending their lives as well, because this is it for them. Like, there's no going back. There's no going forward. This is what their life will be. And, you know, I do understand the argument that they were minors. There are circumstances where being tried and sentenced as an adult is necessary. And this is 100% one of those circumstances, as we had mentioned, because of the videos, because of the lengthy evidence that was found.
The premeditation.
Planning, the talking, everything.
The death list, the fact that they had tried this multiple times before.
There's no other way that they can play this off or pin it on anything else that is not 100% responsible, their sole decision. They consciously made this decision to end this poor girl's life.
Yeah, and that's it. There's no arguing it. There's no way around it.
So, devil's advocate again. We've discussed in our conversations about how 16-year-olds, your brain's not fully developed, fully formed. So, how much can your brain, how much have you changed since you were that age, since you were 16, your mindset then to now? You're still the same person, but are you really the same person?
Oh, so much. I mean, your rational thinking and ability to like have a thought and then go, that's not a good idea. And the lack of impulse control that a 16-year-old has versus somebody at our age or even in your late 20s is completely different than a 16-year-old's.
These kids, granted, they've been in a completely different environment that we've been in, that we've been able to grow our minds and expand and everything. They've not been in that same kind of environment, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't, that's not a possibility that they have. So with that way of thinking, there is a possibility that an evaluation could be done and they can be reintegrated into society. On a personal opinion, though, yes, even though they were 16, because of how serious everything was, I don't foresee that. That just seems like such a ingrained, deep thing about them. I don't foresee that ever truly leaving. So I don't know that I would be comfortable with them walking around. And I sure as hell don't think that Cassie's family, well, I can't speak for the family, but if it was my family, I don't know that they would be comfortable having them out just in the off chance that something could happen again.
And that was the horrific murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. Thanks for sticking with us. I'm so glad Amber was here to cover this with me and help me tell her story.
Thanks for having me. You're stuck with me now.
I am stuck with you and I could not be happier about it. I'm so glad you're here. So I think that's everything, unless you have anything else you want to
I think that just about covers our little corner of chaos here.
Corner of chaos. I gotta write that one down. I really hoped you loved this. I have to say, this is probably not that covering these things is ever fun, but this is definitely the most enjoyable that it's been up to this point, and I'm so glad that this is a duo and not a single.
Looking forward to where it's gonna go.
And until next time, stay safe. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to They're Terrified and Tipsy.
My name is Courtney.
And I'm Stephanie.
Since we have very different feelings about scary movies, we decided to share our emotional struggles with you all.
Yeah, so grab a glass of wine, your favorite couch blanket, and get comfy and enjoy the ride with us. You can find They're Terrified and Tipsy on Instagram and Twitter, plus all the podcast platforms. For links, head over to tipsypod.com. Cheers!